Do you know silence is often mistaken for weakness? But what if I told you that, in the world of the narcissist, it is your silence that shatters their entire ego? Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And nowhere is this truer than when we look at the fragile existence of the narcissist's ego. From Jung's perspective, the narcissist is trapped within the persona, the mask they wear to be accepted by society, while endlessly running from the shadow, the wounded darkness inside them that they cannot face. And when you choose no contact for a prolonged period, you are not merely ignoring their messages or blocking communication. You are forcing them to confront the most terrifying truth, the emptiness that lies behind that mask. In this video, we will decode what truly happens to a narcissist when no contact is maintained. You will see how their paranoid persona begins to collapse, how the shadow rises with rage, panic, and desperate attempts to pull you back, and why all of this is not just a psychological reaction but an existential crisis. Stay with me until the end of the video, because by understanding this phenomenon through Carl Jung's lens, you will not only see the narcissist differently, but also recognize the true power within yourself. Part 1. Ego Crisis. When the mask cracks. One of the least recognized truths is this: when you cut off contact with a narcissist, you are not simply disappearing from their life. You are dismantling an entire psychological structure they have built to survive. For the average person, silence may bring loneliness, but it can also be a chance to reflect, to grow, and to rediscover oneself. For the narcissist, however, silence is a sentence. It forces them to confront what they fear most, the emptiness within. Carl Jung once explained that every human being carries both a persona, the mask we wear to fit into society, and a shadow, the hidden darkness we try to conceal. For the narcissist, their entire ego is almost nothing but persona. They live to perform, to elicit reactions from others. Without an audience, the performance collapses into nothingness. And when you withdraw, when you no longer respond, the entire stage they built suddenly crumbles. Imagine a mirror they have relied upon their whole life, one that only ever reflected back the image others gave them. Then one day, that mirror vanishes. Instead of a reflection, they see only a vast void. This is why no contact drives them into such a violent ego crisis. A narcissist does not have a solid inner self. Their identity is borrowed from the gaze and validation of others. When that supply disappears, they panic like an addict deprived of their drug. In that moment, haunting questions begin to invade their mind. Who am I if this person no longer sees me? What worth do I have without their reaction? Questions that may sound simple, but for them, they strike like lightning, shattering the fragile shell of self-importance. This is the existential crisis Jung described, the moment when the shadow rises, dragging them into inner chaos. For you, the one who has chosen silence, this carries profound meaning. It reveals the true power of setting boundaries. You don't need to argue, prove yourself, or win a debate. Through steady silence alone, you shake the very foundation of the illusion the narcissist clings to. No contact is not only self-protection, it is also truth unveiled. Their power existed only as long as you participated in the game. Once you step away, the game ends, and the narcissist is left alone with a void they cannot endure. This is the opening act of their ego crisis, and it is always the most devastating turning point for them. Part 2. The Unleashed Rage. If the first stage of no contact drives the narcissist into an ego crisis, the next stage ignites a fire they themselves cannot control: rage. But this is not ordinary anger, the kind we all feel when hurt or misunderstood. This is narcissistic rage, a storm of chaotic, consuming fury that Jung would have described as the eruption of the shadow, the part of the psyche that carries old wounds, shame, and buried inferiority. To the narcissist, your silence is not lost communication. It is betrayal. In their world, you are not allowed to leave. You are seen as an extension of their ego, a possession to be used. So when you choose silence, you are striking at the very core of their illusion of control. This act triggers a rage that knows no bounds. This rage has layers. At first it may appear as angry messages, accusations, or even direct threats. But when you remain silent, the fire does not fade, it transforms into covert actions, smearing your reputation, spreading rumors, or rewriting the narrative to paint you as the traitor. This is projection. They cast outward all the feelings they cannot face within themselves. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Yet narcissists invert this truth. What they cannot acknowledge, their weakness, helplessness, and shame, returns as rage aimed at the one who dared to leave. Instead of facing their own darkness, they turn you into the mirror of it. The paradox is this: the more they rage, the more they reveal the truth. A truly strong person does not need to scream to prove their power. Only the fragile must weaponize fury to uphold their illusion of strength. So when you witness their rage, remember it is not proof of their dominance. It is evidence of their deepest fragility. For you, the one holding no contact, this is the most testing phase. Their fury may shake you, frighten you, or even make you doubt yourself. But if you stand firm in your silence, you will see the truth of narcissistic power. It is not solid. It is only a mask, cracking under the weight of your quiet resistance. Part 3. Hoovering when they try to suck you back in. After the storm of rage, the narcissist rarely stops. They move on to a subtler tactic, what psychologists call hoovering, from the Hoover vacuum cleaner, their attempt to suck you back into their orbit. If during the rage phase they pushed you away with pressure and threats, in hoovering they switch roles entirely, tender, apologetic, even romantic. Sweet traps appear in the form of messages like, "I miss you, I've changed," or "We were so happy once." They may resurrect old memories, send you a song tied to your relationship, or write heartfelt promises. Yet all of this has only one purpose: to pull you back in as a source of supply. Carl Jung would view this as a reenactment of the persona, the social mask. When the mask of power and control cracks under your silence, they quickly try on another: the loving partner, the remorseful sinner, the fragile soul in need of rescue. But beneath every mask, the shadow remains empty, restless, and desperate for control. They are not returning to love, they are returning to the illusion of self-maintenance. What makes hoovering dangerous is that it strikes the most human parts of you: memory, compassion, empathy. If you still hold on to nostalgia, or the hope that they might change, you can easily be pulled into this cycle. But remember, their gentleness now is not genuine affection, it is survival strategy. Jung emphasized that true growth comes when one faces and integrates the darkness within. Narcissists choose the opposite. They flee from that darkness by pulling others back in, using you as a mirror for their fabricated self. Hoovering can last weeks or months, shifting through many masks: sweetness, pity, remorse, blame. Each time you respond, even with a short message, it is as though you have plugged them back in. Immediately, they use that as fuel to keep the same play alive. This is why, during hoovering, silence remains your strongest weapon. Your refusal to engage not only rejects the new mask, but forces them once again to face the truth. Their power only existed as long as you played along. And when you do not return, their vacuum runs endlessly in vain, exposing more and more of their desperation. Part 4. The collapse of the mask. If hoovering is a desperate attempt to patch together the fragments of their mask, then when you hold firm to no contact, the most devastating moment arrives. The persona, the narcissist's social mask, begins to collapse. Carl Jung reminded us that the persona is only an outer shell for adapting to the world. It is never our true essence. For the narcissist, however, the persona is their entire existence. They don't just wear the mask to live, they are the mask. When your supply disappears, the mask loses function, and the truth is revealed. Behind the glittering facade lies an abyss. At this stage, you may witness rapid, contradictory shifts in them. One day they may flaunt on social media that they are happy, successful, and have moved on from you. The next day, they may slip into the role of a tragic victim, lamenting that you abandoned them, accusing you of being cruel. These transformations are not growth. They are hastily crafted masks to cover the internal collapse. But like a play with no audience, the more they act, the more the illusion cracks. Outsiders may not see it immediately, but you who once stood behind the curtain, who has seen them without the costume, know the collapse is real. Every boast, every performance is nothing more than a desperate struggle against the darkness swallowing them. Jung wrote, "One does not become whole by remaining in the light, but by making the darkness conscious." Yet for the narcissist, the collapse of the mask does not lead to self-awareness, it leads to terror. They do not know how to live without the mask. And because they lack the courage to face their shadow, they keep running from one illusion to another, from one relationship to the next, from one role to another. But the further they run, the more exhausted, fractured, and inconsistent their ego becomes. For you, the one who stepped out of their play, the collapse of the mask is a profound reminder. You do not need to prove them wrong, nor expose them to others. Time and silence do that for you. When the mask falls, the truth reveals itself. The narcissist was never as strong as they pretended, and it is that very deception that is now destroying them. Part 5. The smear campaign. When they attack your reputation. When the narcissist realizes they can no longer control you directly, they often turn to a more indirect but equally ruthless strategy, controlling the story about you. This is when the so-called smear campaign begins. For you, silence is a choice to protect yourself. But in their eyes, your silence is rebellion, even humiliation. A narcissist cannot accept that you left willingly, because that would mean they are not as all-powerful as they delude themselves to be. To fill this loss, they construct a new narrative, one where you are the villain, and they are either the victim or the hero. Carl Jung explained that people tend to project what they cannot accept in themselves onto others. Narcissists take this mechanism to the extreme. If they are angry, they say you are the hot-headed one. If they lie, they label you dishonest. If they are controlling, they accuse you of being controlling. In other words, when they attack your reputation, they are unconsciously exposing their own shadow. A smear campaign rarely starts loud or direct. It seeps in like a small ink stain spreading across a white page. At first, it may sound like vague remarks. "I don't know why they've changed so much," or "I tried my best, but nothing was ever enough for them." These half-true, half-fabricated statements are carefully planted among friends, family, and colleagues, people who may be influenced by outward impressions. The hardest part for you in this stage is the injustice. While they actively spread poison, you stay silent, not wanting to return to the old cycle. To outsiders, that silence can sometimes look like admission. This is the trap the narcissist sets. But remember Jung's words. What we deny in ourselves eventually appears in the world around us. The truth has its way of surfacing over time. The more they smear, the more they reveal their own insecurity, lack of control, and obsession. Those who watch closely will begin to notice the cracks in their story. And at that point, their mask fractures yet again. For you, the key is consistency. You do not need to chase after every rumor to clear your name. Every time you react, you re-enter the game they designed. Your real power lies in continuing to live by your own values. Integrity over time becomes the strongest evidence. The smear campaign may seem designed to destroy you, but in reality it is a desperate performance. It shows that the narcissist cannot let go. Instead of maturing from loss, they cling to illusion through lies. And with every false word, they move closer to their inevitable collapse. Part 6. Addiction cut off. When the supply disappears. One truth few dare to face is this. Narcissists don't just like your attention, they are addicted to it. Every reaction, every drop of emotion you give, from love to anger, functions like a drug that sustains their fragile illusion of self. When you truly walk away, when no contact is maintained long enough, it is no different from cutting an addict off from their substance. The result? Withdrawal, in its most brutal form. Carl Jung pointed out that an undeveloped ego will always seek something external to fill its inner void. For narcissists, narcissistic supply is that oxygen. When it disappears, they don't just get uncomfortable, they panic. The symptoms often look like agitation, obsessive thinking, sleeplessness, intrusive thoughts about you, or even reckless behaviors to soothe the craving. The painful truth is this: they don't see you as a person with intrinsic value, but as an energy source to consume. So when you are gone, they don't simply miss you, they crave you, like an addict craving the next fix. This is not love, this is dependency. During this stage, you may notice them swing wildly. One moment they devalue you, blaming you for everything. The next they idolize you as the only one who ever truly understood them. This extreme split isn't caused by you, it's a symptom of their inability to regulate emotions, a clear marker of their addiction. Jung would describe this as the shadow breaking through. With no one left to mirror them, they are forced to face the darkness they have buried all their lives. The fear of abandonment, the shame of worthlessness, the abyss within. But instead of confronting it and growing, they run back to the old pattern, desperately seeking a new supply. A new partner, a new relationship, a new performance, temporary fixes for an eternal hunger. Yet every new supply only deepens the addiction. No one can ever fill that void, because the problem isn't external, it's internal. And so the cycle of addiction to temporary relief, to emptiness, to addiction, repeats endlessly, leaving behind an ego that grows more fractured with each turn. For you, witnessing this can be both painful and illuminating. Painful because you realize the love you once gave was consumed like fuel instead of cherished. Illuminating because you see the deeper truth. Your silence doesn't hurt them because they lost you as a person, but because they lost a source. And that realization frees you. It allows you to step out of the old role and begin the true journey of healing for yourself. Part 7. The dissolution of the illusion of control. If there is one thing a narcissist treats as oxygen for survival, it is the sense of control. Control over behavior, control over emotions, control over how others perceive them. It is not merely a tool for manipulation, it is the foundation upon which their fragile ego is built. But when you remain steadfast in no contact for an extended period, that foundation begins to crack. And as your silence continues, the so-called illusion of control eventually dissolves. Carl Jung emphasized that the more a person clings to external illusions, the harder it becomes to confront the darkness within. For the narcissist, the illusion of control is the armor shielding them from the shadow, that reservoir of shame, fear, and inferiority. Once that armor fractures, they are forced to face what they've always run from, their own helplessness. At this stage, they often spiral into chaos. On one hand, they cling desperately to self-soothing narratives. They'll come back. I'll regain control. On the other, your persistent silence proves the opposite. Each day you are no longer inside their orbit. That absence feels like a sentence, a daily reminder that they are not the omnipotent figure they imagined themselves to be. Picture an actor standing on stage. All their life they've been accustomed to spotlights, applause, and the attention of an audience. Then, one day, the theater is empty. They continue performing, reciting their lines, but the more they act, the louder the emptiness echoes. That is exactly how the narcissist feels when their illusion of control disintegrates. This truth is harsher than rejection itself, because they are not just losing you, they are losing the story that once defined them. I am in control. I am the center. I am untouchable. When that story collapses, there is nothing left to stand on. And for an ego already so fragile, this becomes a true existential crisis. It is important to understand, this dissolution does not happen overnight. It is a process. First comes denial, then rage, followed by desperate hoovering, then the smear campaign, and finally collapse when nothing holds any longer. Each stage is nothing but a futile attempt to preserve the illusion. And when all attempts fail, the truth emerges. They never had absolute power, only the illusion of it. For you, the one who has chosen silence with unwavering consistency, this is the ultimate confirmation. You have not only escaped their control, but you have proven that their power existed only because you allowed it. When you withdraw that permission, they lose both the stage and the script. And that marks the complete dissolution of the illusion they clung to all their life. Reaching the end of this journey, we can see clearly, your choice of no contact is not merely avoidance, it is awakening. It strips away layer after layer of the narcissist's illusions, from the ego crisis, the eruption of rage, the desperate hoovering, to the collapse of the mask, the smear campaign, the addiction to supply, and finally the dissolution of the illusion of control. Each stage not only exposes their psychology but also reveals something essential. True strength lies in your silence and your boundaries. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And through this very experience, you have forced the narcissist to face the shadow they have run from all their lives. But more importantly, you have also been given the chance to see your own shadow, the part that once made you believe that sacrifice, forgiveness, and endurance were the price to keep love. By choosing silence, you are not only breaking their power games, you are breaking the false belief that your worth lies in someone else's hands. This is the step into individuation that Jung described. The process of separating yourself from collective illusions, from the control of others, and returning to your truest self. Your silence, therefore, is not weakness. It is the declaration of inner strength. And as you can see, the narcissist may panic, rage, and create endless scenarios to pull you back. But in the end, your silence remains the most powerful response, something they cannot manipulate. That silence itself becomes proof that their power was never real, and that you were never as weak as they wanted you to believe. If you are on this path right now, remember, you are not only saying no to a toxic relationship, you are saying yes to yourself. With every day you hold your boundaries, you are rebuilding a stronger, freer, and more awakened version of who you are. And to continue walking together on this journey of healing and awakening, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and share this video with anyone you think needs to hear this message. Together, we are not only naming the darkness, we are finding the light.